Welcome to the Yesusers podcast, where we dive deep into the journeys of inspiring individuals who are making a difference in the world. Today, we have a phenomenal guest with us, Prateek Khare. So let me tell you about Prateek. He's currently working as the Chief Marketing Officer at Edudite. Prateek has dedicated his career to helping African students get better education opportunities than what are available in their home country. So let's start this podcast by welcoming Prateek. So Prateek, welcome to Yes Users podcast. How are you?
I'm doing great, Avinash. Thank you so much for inviting me today. How's everything?
Everything is going great, yeah. So, Prateek, tell us about yourself. You have had a very diverse background from computer science to marketing, now with international education. Can you share your journey for our listeners?
Sure. Okay. So, yes, it has been quite interesting. I started out with the computer science engineering degree, just like I believe the multitude of people in India that start with their IIT dreams. I went to LPU, a lovely professional university, but then something happened in my first semester, wherein I came across an organization and somehow I got into an internship with the United Nations, and I was sent to Egypt right after my first semester for an internship. So that's where I believe the things changed out, and I got an outlook about, the education sector. I was working for an NGO under the UN in Egypt. After coming back from there is when I realized that I wanted to make some impact in the education field because of the sites that I saw there. I was working with an underprivileged school as part of the project as well. So I came back, I worked with an organization called ISEC. I don't know if you know about that. So I went on to become their vice president as well at some point of time. And I worked with many schools, university deans and people like that. And because I was also in a university which is LPU, like I mentioned, there was a lot of international students at that point of time, a lot of Africans that were even in my class and so on. So when I spoke to them and I had contacts in the university itself in the management, so that's when things came out a little bit of, it was kind of a surprise from what I've expected in terms of their experience, because we as externals to anything that is happening in that sphere, we don't know what's going on inside. But I later realized or learned from these people that their whole journey of coming to India at LPU or at any university, it's extremely daunting, filled with a lot of challenges. And it's not just one way. It's also the same for the university. So then I believe everything came together, which is when in my final year, I dropped the placement that I had received. I got a good placement. I did not opt for that. I convinced my parents somehow, thankfully, and I ventured into this sector to start up and help students basically to come to India and venture into that path. So yeah.
Wow, great story. So tell us about Edudite. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. So what is the problem you're solving? What is your typical user base? I'm sure you have other people also as a co-founders. So tell us about their journey. How did you guys meet? The whole origin story.
Right. So again, interesting. Edudite, yes, it's an Edudite Consultancy Private Limited. That's the full name. It's basically, we don't really term it as a startup right now. We term it as a full-fledged business on its own. We have been a profitable business since the inception, and it's basically a consultancy company who helps and supports Indian universities to, set up grounds in Africa and get access to that market for admissions, plus also helping African students to then explore different education opportunities higher up, be it India, and as of now also in the Europe, UK, US, all of those different countries. So that's how it is. Now, if I talk about the people that we have in the team, yes. So we were two people who started this company initially. The main founder is Mr. Saksham, who founded this company first, and then I joined in as a co-founder. So we were both together in the organization that I said. He was the president and I was the vice president within that organization. So we were together for about 3 years or so while we were seeing all of this. And because he was 2 years elder to me, senior to me. So after he finished his education, completed there, he started working with LPU as well. in the international department itself for about 6 months or so, while that was the time I was in my final year. So while we both synced with these terminologies, and this is something that we had done before in ASIC as well to some extent. So that is when we found that this is a certain gap. Now, when I explain the gap exactly, is that what happens is everyone knows in every nook and corner, there are agencies which send students from India to Canada. That is like the biggest thing, especially in Punjab or Gujarat, it's every nook and corner. So we are doing the exact opposite. What happened is we were doing something similar in ISEC first to go back, is in we were helping students or people in general to come on different short-term internships to India, and then from India to abroad as well. Just like I went on one to Egypt. That is when we interacted with a lot of people from Africa who had been here for multiple years for full-fledged degrees. We realized that when they're in back home in their countries, they also have people like agents that we have here. But those people have zero idea of anything that's going on here. Anything about the university, how does it look like, the courses, the criteria, what should they expect in terms of education, food, lifestyle, everything is just haywire. Exceptions are there, there's a couple of them who have been here. But other than that, it was completely a money-making sector. For the universities, again, on this side, yes, they wanted to promote themselves because, of course, it brings diversity to their campus. And also, to some extent, the fees that they get from these students is much higher than what Indians pay. It is lucrative. But as soon as these people land in India, there's a lot of documentation, legalities with the immigration, and then the expectations that they come here with is completely to the roof. And now the universities are not able to match that. Now, because in our country, this is a general stereotype, anyone who sees an African automatically thinks that this person is coming from a poor country where there is no electricity, no water, people are not having food and they're running gross because, well, what has media taught us, what has BBC or CNN told us? So the teachers, the people who are handling these people are thinking of them from that perspective because they have not had the opportunity or seen anything on ground what's happening. Now, these people that are actually coming here are people who are coming from good countries. For example, if I take you through a country called Namibia, which is bordering South Africa, or even South Africa for that matter, these are countries whose economy currently, let's say the dollar to local currency ratio is far better than India. Their currency compares like $1 is 20 Namibian dollars or South African rands. India's is 80, so times 4, right? The infrastructure, of course, I'll not compare it to Mumbai or Delhi, but yes, it's very good. Cleanliness, everything is there. So when they come, they see something entirely different because obviously you want to go to a place which is much higher than what you want. Second is these students come here because of the education that we provide. While we were in college, I'm sure in your time as well, everyone says that India's education system is completely blasted off. We don't have practical knowledge and everything like that. But India's education right now is one of the top 5 education systems in the world. And it is very, very highly recognized. So these people come for that because they don't have settlement opportunity. So this was a gap wherein these people are not getting what they were promised because the picture in itself was very different. These university guys were not able to deliver, although they wanted to be, but because of zero idea what's happening on the background, they had no clue how to handle them, their language, culture, everything. And this was a mismatch. Now, during that time, me and Saksham had both traveled quite a bit to different parts of the world. And because of those and because of our engagements with different kind of people, we had an idea of handling the international tie-ups. So that's when we decided, okay, let's start off with helping these students while they're here. And then we move forward towards actually setting up offices. So right now we have our offices in about 10 countries in Africa, where we have our own staff, which we help students through. And then I myself travel almost about 4 months a year. I'm in Africa. So yeah.
Wow, great concept. I have to, give you that. But what is the primary motivation, right? Like if I speak to students who wants to go to the US or Canada or Australia for that matter, the primary motivation that I've come across is, ultimately settling there, right? So what have you observed in case of African students coming to India?
Right. So in terms of African students, rightly, they don't have this option that they will settle here because Indian government norms of a foreigner getting a work permit in India is extremely drastically different and difficult. someone needs to be given a salary of at least about $2,000 a month for them to be able to even apply for a work permit to India. So that's very difficult. Their main motive are two things. One is, like I said, the Indian education system worldwide is recognized. So when they come abroad, the degree that they get, even if it's from private universities in India, that holds value. So when they go back to their home countries, they have a higher possibility of getting government jobs, because especially in these countries, the populations are not as much as, of course, that in Asia we have. And because of that, the competition is not that much. So majority of the population usually depends on government jobs, which is fairly available and easily accessible. So that's one of the most favorable motivations. Second is, a lot of the times them getting foreign visas for the Europe or US, UK is not very easy. So India becomes kind of a pathway wherein they do their first degrees or a bachelor's here in India, and then maybe then proceed to these countries, the Western countries, for the masters. And the third being the cost. To study in India for them is many a times even cheaper than studying locally at their own universities. So these are the main three things.
Yeah, kind of makes sense. So tell us about the typical experience that these guys get. And as you rightly said that, in India, if he's a colored person, we have certain stereotypes attached with that. And we have had certain incidents in this arena, like incidents of racism. So what is the typical feedback that you get from these students who come here and study for 3 to 4 years?
See, initially when we started in 2017 and we got our first batch in 2018, and thereafter we've been growing. So initially, of course, we were also limited by resource. So the students that we used to get, thankfully, went to good universities wherein the experience was smooth and the universities were able to capacitate them and accommodate them and get through whatever was requested. Of course, through interference in between here and there. But in general, we had to choose cities in that time, like we're talking about 6-7 years before now, that where they could be accommodated and it was safe for them, right? Over the years, what we have also done is we have also grown in numbers in terms of the employee strength and other resources as well. So we've been able to sort of create SOPs around these experiences together with the universities, wherein we control their experience to a certain aspect so as to make it very much secure. For example, from many universities where we work right now, we have basically outsourced their complete international department as such. So when I say that to you right now, that means that for certain universities, I am also the Deputy Director of International Affairs, or certain those positions that we take up, wherein that helps us to make sure that whatever their experience is, at least on campus, be it in terms of academics, be it in terms of accommodation, be it in terms of inclusivity in events, participations, making them feel included by celebrating their own culture, giving access to their own food, giving experiences like travels and stuff or internships for them. So these things we have now incorporated slowly and steadily to make them feel easier. And right now when I see we have graduates who have graduated from the programs and went back, and when I see them being, employed at different high-paying sectors or high-level government jobs and everything, it really gives you goosebumps when you go back home and, the mother calls or the father of the person calls that, "Thank you so much, sir. You've changed the future of not just this one guy, but actually my whole village is now different from what it used to look like. He's brought this and that." And then, so yeah, it does give goosebumps, yeah.
Wow. Great story there. So I think you have spoken to a lot of people, I guess like somewhere around 50,000, if I'm correct.
Yeah, I think that was right now the number is more than 80,000 if I'm not wrong. 80, I guess.
Good for you. So the question I wanted to ask is that, a lot of people have stage fright, right? How would I go and give a speech or present a particular pitch before a large audience? So what will you advise those people?
See, very honestly, I would tell you that even now, even after having spoken to these many people ever since doing all of this, it still gives me shivers before I enter the auditorium. But what gives me strength, and everyone has different opinions on it, but as soon as I walk into the room and I see people, I prefer usually not to be backstage. I prefer to enter through the audience, generally if it's possible. Because as soon as I enter and I see the people looking at me and all of that, that moment takes everything away from me. Then I enter into a different zone. So that helps. But other than that, in a general perspective, I believe for someone who has stage fright, I think you have to just practice. And the moment you come there, you will have to just go away. Everyone has their own trick. I remember I was speak to myself. That to me doesn't make sense, but to that person, maybe it helps. Someone says, find one person and just lock eyes with them. That to them may make sense, but everyone has their own tricks, which they eventually then make part of their process before coming on stage.
So when was the first time you gave a presentation before a large audience?
Okay, I have had at least the luck and the opportunity to be on stage ever since childhood. Even I remember I still have the photographs. I was in first class, something like that. I was 5 years old. And since then, I remember at least in my formative years until class 10th, 11th, I was regularly every week, some or the other thing was happening. So either be it plays, be it, even if I was not able to sing, I would go up and sing. I was part of the orchestra. I would dance, knowing nothing about dance still. But when I talk about speech itself, I believe the first that I remember in school, that was in grade 9th, where I had an inter-school state competitions. That was about a big audience. And then, career-wise, when we really started was again in my second semester after I came back from the internship. And I remember this very specifically that I was invited to NIT Jalandhar to give a motivational speech about education and opportunities to the master students at NIT Jalandhar. So that's when I realized that, this was a college which I was dreaming of and was writing exams to get into. And then first year, and I'm coming back here and lecturing master students. So I was like, okay, I'm in the right place. I haven't been lost yet.
Wow, great story. And I would say you were lucky to get that exposure. A lot of people I speak to don't get that opportunity. If you start that young now, you never really actually develop stage fright because you have been doing it even before you have even if you start developing memories, right? Tell us about the biggest challenge that you have faced selling a product or service to African countries, right? What are the typical challenges that, normal businesses usually don't face? What are those specific challenges of offering products or services to African countries and specifically to students?
So being in the education sector, I'll speak specifically about that part.
Right.
Because I'm going to sell something which is not a product first. So there's nothing that I can show them that buy this from me. So it makes things a little more difficult. Second, I have had to sell, and even today, more than the service itself, first thing that I have to sell someone is India as a experience, which initially wasn't very easy. Since the Modi government came and all of the trips that Mr. Modi have been taking and, the relationships that we've been having with different countries, especially in Africa, has been helping a lot, definitely. But it's still not been very easy because the positioning of India itself right now is always as a backup option or the second or the third option for anyone. Except in terms of medications, maybe I think even in medicine, it's still second or third, if I'm not wrong. But otherwise as well, India is positioned as a second or third option. Anyone, if you ask, first question, if you had no bars about money or eligibility, where would you want to go? It's either the UK, the US, Canada, or the Europe, right? Or Australia, the big four, or the Europe. India comes as, okay, if I can't go anywhere, okay, let me go to India. The reason, because then we have to play on the cost and the fees. So that has been a big challenge. Second, I don't know why this is. Okay, probably this is both good and bad. As India, after we came out of independence, and a lot of other countries, when they came out of independence from the British itself, there's been a little difference in how we came out. India, up to a large extent, has still managed to retain our original culture, language, everything, dressings, festivals, everything. While a lot of other countries, when they came out, they have taken over a large extent of the cultural factor from the Britishers who left. So even now, when I talk to a country, for example, Zimbabwe, who was also under the British rule, and they still have a question, okay, when I go to India, will I have to learn Hindi? Or does anyone speak English there? Or, it's too hot. How will anyone survive? Well, it's true right now, but we also have winters for that matter. But the food, I've heard it's only chilies that you guys eat and so on and so forth. So first I have to cross that barrier before I can even go and talk about my service or my product. I have to first clear that thought. So that has been a big challenge, I believe.
Wow, great insight there. So now I wanted to know about what are your thoughts on the landscape of international education evolving in the next 5 to 6 years?
Right. Okay, very good question. Landscape of international education, especially after COVID, has been changing a lot. There were two very much deciding factors in this decade, I would say. One was COVID, definitely, which changed education as we know it everywhere, be it in India, domestic, international. But the other big factor was the Ukraine-Russia war. If you may know that, so Ukraine and Russia both used to be a hub of medical education for the world. A lot of students from India used to go to Ukraine and Russia, and from Africa, from South America, all parts of the world. When that happened, we had to shift the center. So the medical center, new medical center was nowhere to be found. We had to find ways. That was also the year 2021 when we started expanding our services from India to also other countries. The first bomb on the Ukraine airport dropped. At that specific time, I had a student from India who was in Abu Dhabi waiting for his next flight to Ukraine. And that's when we hear that, the bomb has dropped in Ukraine at the airport, and then we had to initiate a rescue operation. So all of these things have changed the perception of students drastically, and I would say for the good. Earlier, there used to be hotspots. Ukraine, Russia was one for medical. Then US, UK was a big center. US, UK, Canada, all three of them. And then Europe, India, Malaysia, Dubai, these were still new territories. It was still under exploration. But if you even read the reports that have come out in the past, in just the last 6 months, I believe, even Indian students have started getting more diversified into their choices. Europe has, come up as a big sector for India as well, coming out of US and UK, including the bans that we faced for Indian students in the US as well for some time, the Canada conflict that we had, UK as well. Similarly, for Africa as well, it has, gotten dispersed a little bit. So I believe in the next 5 years, and also because of the tech that is now getting more evolved in the digital education, the online seminars and the vocational part of it, where people are using such short courses to upskill themselves and directly getting jobs. So that does have an impact, and people will, over the next 5 years, get to more diverse locations. And each location will get very segregated in terms of topics specifically. Like when we say medical education also, right now the hotspot is coming to Georgia or Turkey, but that is only for MBBS or dentistry. Then paramedical education hotspot is coming to India right now. Engineering, mechanics, mechatronics hotspot is going to Germany. So it's like very specific niches are being created across the globe, which I believe is a good thing for proper dispersion of the economy as well.
Wow. And you brought on the topic of Germany and the mechanical education there. Absolutely. I know a couple of people who have done mechanical engineering from Germany, and they really vouch for that. So one of the things about Germany's education, which is really not popularly known, that basic education, even for the outsiders, is completely free, right? So that's one thing a lot of people don't know. So would you care to shed a little bit of light on that?
Well, I would. That's not good for business though. But
no, I know. I said do certain things which are not kuch bhala soch lo.
Correct, no problems. So yes, in Germany, also a couple other countries in the European Union, like for example, even in Italy, there's a similar factor that happens, and it's also quite cheap for education. But in Germany, school education is, yes, free from the government side. And even after that, even in India or the class, if you've completed the requirements, which is 13 years of education, you are very much, especially talking about Indians for that matter, is because of the education system that we have, it's very possible that you can get spaces in free education, public universities in Germany for the bachelor's, master's, even PhDs. And when I talk about this, it's not just Germany, it's also Italy. There's something similar in Finland. And there's many other countries where you can access very high quality education. Like for example, Finland right now is the AI center of the world. The innovations in technologies, especially in the AI segment, is extremely, it's charming to say the least, which is happening in Finland for that matter. So there are these opportunities which can be discovered and are lesser known.
Absolutely. And one thing I wanted to tell you about Germany, because I have a cousin studying there, is that a lot of classes actually happen in English as well, right? So the language barrier is also quite less. Or one more caveat I wanted to put to what you said, or one more thing I wanted to add, is that the professional courses like MBA, right? They would not be free. Like, basic BSc, BTech, basic science and humanities subject would be free. And so if you can't afford an MBA, you can do a postgraduate course in say psychology or human sciences. There are a lot of options there. And at the end of the day, what I've been told is that your skill set matters a lot in Germany rather than the university that you're coming for. So if you have built a network, you have learned the practical skills, even if you haven't done an MBA, it's very easy for you to get a job. For instance, I know a lot of people who have done Masters of Finance and instead of doing an MBA, and they are earning, as far as I know, on par with people who have done MBA from Germany. So that's the kind of things that people should be exploring. And Finland, you brought in a very good concept that, obviously AI is booming in almost every sector. And Finland is definitely becoming a hub there. I was speaking to someone related to that a couple of weeks back. In addition to AI, Finland is also quite heavily in gaming industry, if I'm not wrong.
Yes. Yes.
Right. So if these two fields excite you, Finland is there. But you have to learn the language there. Finland, it's not an option for you to not learn the language. In Germany, you can kind of get away with it, but Finland, I don't think that's the case. Is my assessment correct?
Yeah, to some extent. See, in Germany as well, it is possible, but it's not very easy to just get into English-speaking courses. But in Finland, again, what happens is, see, these countries, when it comes to that, they're very stringent on their cultural values. Yeah. And that is the reason where the language part comes in. Even Turkey, for that matter, if you would notice somewhere, in Turkey, there are two kinds of programs, English-spoken programs and Turkish programs, right? In public universities. If you agree that you will learn Turkish and you will do Turkish language programs, the cost of the program is dirt cheap. I'm talking about 10,000 rupees for a year or even lesser. The hostel's very cheap again and everything. But if you do the same program in English language, then in that case, it comes out again to be $4,000 a year plus minus. So what happens in these particular countries, Finland, Germany, because Finland comes in that Finnish German accent as well. Austria, again, similar in the Nordic zone. Their cultural values are so high that they don't want themselves to be dominated by foreigners, seeing as to what has happened in other countries. You remember that wave that recently went in the UK, where the Brits were these people coming from these countries are taking over our jobs and everything. Although, Britishers don't get the right to say that, but well, you leave the place.
There's a joke of Trevor Noah, right? The joke says that, these people, they come from a different land, they don't even speak the language, and they want to take over our land, our jobs. And this is not the British way. And the Trevor Noah says, it sounds like a British way.
If this is not the British way, I don't know what is.
Yeah, that's pretty much true. And, thanks for sharing the advice, which is not financially incentive. पर ऊपर वाले का भी देखो, जाना है वहाँ पे भी, पैसा नहीं जाता वहाँ. Right. And one of the things, it is not financially lucrative, I would say, because these universities, because they themselves not charging a lot, they are not able to share the commission with the education consultants. Right. So a lot of time, some of students have come up and said, that education and consultants push for universities where they get a commission. So education consultants are charging their students and they are getting a commission as well. Right. Which I think not disclosing is unfair. So tell us a little bit about that. What is the scene there?
Yeah, okay, that is very, very true. And that is very, very unfortunate as well, to be honest. Yes, that happens, especially in India. And in India, what also happens is because I told you that the number of agents that have sprung up, some are big, but most of them are small, tiny, one small room, 200 square foot office where only one person can fit in, right? Now, how are these people surviving is that the university does not even know about that this person or a company like this exists. So some other company, for example, let's say my company, is authorized by the university. Now, this one person will come, sir, I have so-and-so students that I want to give to this university through you. And this, you make a deal, and then this person starts coming out. But then in those cases, what happens is the chances of getting quality students goes out of the window because this person has no clue on what is eligibility, has no clue what is actually being sorry about that. But this person has no clue about what is being asked by
just for the people who are not watching the video. Prateek was explaining stuff and he was commenting with a thumbs up, which is a very German way to do, just FYI. Right. And the Zoom started showing that the emoji of like thumbs up. So that's what we were talking. We were laughing at. So please, Prateek, continue.
Right. Yeah. So I was saying that so these people, these small agents, they have no idea what eligibility is, what students need, what is to be done. They find some random person, get money from them as well, which is not disclosed to even the agents who are going through, and the university as well. So this is really unfortunate. In our case, because we are dealing with African students, what we have done so far, we don't deal with Indian students, first of all. Except any walk-ins that come through and known, but we don't mark it up, we don't accept. With the African students, we have made it a very strict policy that, especially for most of the countries, like for example, India, we don't charge the student even a single rupee for our services. Our services for the student is completely free of cost.
Right.
Same goes for many other countries. In certain universities or certain countries where we don't get commissions or where we don't get any sort of financial, this thing out of it. Because at the end of the day, we are also a business and we do have to pay our bills. Absolutely. We do charge a certain fees to the student, but all of that is given to them in writing on a letterhead before they even pay anything. That this is what we will be charging. This is what you will be paying. We call it a CLC, conditional letter of choices. So you are paying this and this. If you want, go through that. And second, also one general advice that I give to these students, plus also I think it applies to everyone, even in the Indian aspect, is generally as Indians, and even when I was choosing a university, what do we look at? We look at what is the placement like? Yeah. That's the first thing that comes to the mind, right? What is this university's placement like? Rarely do we look at what is the qualification of the faculties that are teaching there.
Right.
What is the kind of infrastructure that is being given to me? Right. Now, we recently, I think if you saw the news for this batch that passed out from IITs this year,
yeah,
the IITs and IIMs average placement is down extremely. I think it was average around 3 to 5 lakhs for an IIT. Now, imagine other private colleges, what would happen. So, generally, I say this again, and this is the European way of choosing a university or college, which is why they have been able to maintain the standards of the fees and education there. Is that you should not look at the university's placement because that can never be guaranteed. And when you start looking at that, because you as the user is asking for it, a private university is bound to use it as a marketing gimmick. When you see 100% placement record, 99% placement record, a highest salary of 20 lakhs or 30 lakhs per annum, I am reminded of the AIB's video where I see Tanmay about putting people in track like, okay, take him out as mass recruiter. Yeah. So that is not what you have to look at. What you have to look at is actually, okay, can this university give me quality education because it has faculty which is qualified? Is the infrastructure at par? If I'm going into a scientific course, right? Do they have labs? Do they have such and such things? Third is, for example, the exposure that I'm getting in terms of industry people coming to give lectures or me being exposed to industry programs or visits to these industry things. Is it possible or given by them? And fourth is the extracurricular activities that are available for me to then shape myself as a, all-round professional. If this is done, the fifth And the last thing should be, is this college or university bringing reputable companies on campus for placement? Getting into them is something that you yourself can only control. If you have not sat in the classes, your attendance is 60%, your marks are 20%, you are not getting in them, even if it's a IIM. But even if you are someone who has gotten 75% attendance, 75% marks, not the brightest of the person, but you've also done very well in extracurriculars. You have had the chance to upskill yourself in different sectors, different short certificates that you have. You've had the chance to do a little bit of sales, a little bit of volunteer work, a little bit of this and that. A company would pick you over the brightest person any day, because everyone wants an all-rounder. And any business person in their right minds, if someone can bring me business and is still doing 2 Python codes less a day, I would still take him.
Very interesting thoughts there, Prateek. I couldn't agree more with you. So, Prateek, as we are running out of time, thanks a lot for coming on the Yesusers podcast, sharing your stories, sharing your insights. Even some of them were not financially benefiting you directly. Thanks a lot for doing that. We can't thank you enough. I hope our listeners also find a lot of value in what we spoke here.
Thank you so much, Avinash. Thank you so much for bringing me here today and for the opportunity to share these things that I had under to all the listeners out there and with you. Always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Completely our pleasure. Thanks a lot, Prateek.
Thank you so much.
Thank you to our listeners for tuning in to the episode of Yesusers podcast. We hope you enjoyed our conversation with Prateek. If you found this episode as helpful as I did, don't forget to share it with your friends and network. Also, stay tuned for more enlightening conversations with extraordinary individuals on Yesusers podcast. Until next time, keep striving for excellence and making a positive impact in the world.